I think the exact moment when it dawned on me that Yorkshire was a magical place was when I pulled my car off the road which leads from Grinton over Bellaby Moor to Leyburn. There was everything here. Wildness and solitude breathing from the bare fells, yet a hint of softness where the river wound along the valley floor. On summer days when the sun beats down, these lonely miles are a paradise, the air heavy with the sweetness of warm grass, the breeze carrying 1,000 scents.
Those words were written by the world's most famous vet, evoking feelings for a land that I've fallen in love with too.
It was around the highest point as I looked back over the swelling moorland to the valley of the Swale in disbelief. I was captivated, completely spellbound, and I still am to this day. I'm Christopher Timothy, and this is James Herriot's Yorkshire. And so to Leyburn in Wensleydale to meet a couple of mates, David and Ruth. We're going to do the Herriot Walk. Part of his favourite country is enclosed in a triangle formed by 3 youth hostels, a walk he did with his son Jimmy. We're going to follow that route. Leyburn, right on the doorstep of the Dale, is where the young vet first met Frank Bingham, who is Ewan Ross in the books. There's a great cattle market here on Fridays.
Have we got time for a quick look?
Yeah, come on.
When I was young, I milked cows with bucket and stool. And of course, as I got up, we went to what we call the bucket plant. That was the bucket between 2 cows. You know what I mean? Yeah. Now then, when I was away there, I went to yard and parlour system, you see, from the cow to the tank. That was lovely.
If you've retired, Jeff, what are you doing here?
Among my friends, you know, to have a chat. But I would only be sat at home watching television or doing a bit of gardening in me, like around the bungalow. Going back, I have 2 sisters at Hunter, if you know it. Well, I have one sister, her son's is farming. She lost her husband. They're farming. I go to them and have my tea there. How long that to be? Till maybe at 8 o'clock tonight. Back home. That's what I do. Just it makes a day for me, you know.
Better give Ruth a chance to catch up, eh?
Yeah.
If you look over the ridge, first ridge, that's Coverdale the other side. And this is Wensleydale, as far as the eye can see. Right, we're off. And it's just as far as it looks. Our first stop is Wensley, once an important market town, the capital of the Dale. But in 1563, the town was ravaged by a deadly plague. Many of its inhabitants perished, and most of the others fled in terror. So the town sank within itself. Its bustling market disappeared, and the place became the sleepy village it has been for 400 years. And many of the plague victims will very probably laid to rest here. Happy things have happened here too. This is where television's James and Helen were married, in All Creatures Great and Small. And by coincidence, just a few miles along the road over there, the real-life Mr. and Mrs. Herriot spent their honeymoon. You see that tower up there on the green bit?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's called Polly Peacham's Tower. Now, many, many years ago, the local lord married a not very good opera singer called Polly Peacham. And he built her that tower so she could sing to her heart's content without upsetting the neighbours. We're here to meet farmer Raymond Hunter, well known in the local sheepdog world. Several years ago, his son Andrew worked a couple of their dogs in an episode of All Creatures Great and Small.
Yes, that goat, Chris, it thinks it's a cow. When it was a baby, we reared it with some calves, and it thought it was a cow ever since, and it comes up the road every day with the cows, and it's never had a kid in its life, but it had a phantom pregnancy and started to milk, and we've milked it every day for 2 years now. It's never stopped. And it's a bit of a tourist attraction. When a car comes by, they all stop and take a photo of the goat, and it's, you know, part of the scene now at Redmire.
See you again soon. See you. See you too. Bye.
Meg, what'll do? Meg.
Castle Bolton, where Mary Queen of Scots was imprisoned. And that's where television's James Herriot proposed to his Helen, high up in those battlements. After the wedding celebrations in Thirsk, the Herriots went to the cinema in Richmond, before coming to the Wheatsheaf Inn in Carperby. The newlyweds had planned a working honeymoon, tuberculin testing. James tested and injected, Helen noted down the skin measurements. Together they made a formidable team.
Asgarth Falls, and the first night's rest on the Herriot Walk. Herriot's Darrowby is a bit of Thirsk, something of Richmond, Laban, Middleham, and a fair chunk of his imagination. But the core of television's Darrowby was Asgarth. Most of the village has been featured at one time or another. The King's Arms was the Drover's Arms.
Oh, cheers.
And there have been more Morning James, by Siegfried, and Aop Veterinary outside the location used for Skeldale, James and Siegfried's surgery and home, than anywhere else. It still bears the inscription, stuck up by the design team all those years ago. To the village of Hardrow. Through the Green Dragon pub, into the long ravine behind, and to the cliff at the far end. Many parts of Yorkshire seem to belong to a different time. They have a magic, almost mythical quality. For example, the butter tubs. Rainwater has eaten away at the limestone for centuries, creating these menacing pits. It is said that farmers, returning from market, would hang their unsold butter over the edge in baskets and collect it on their way back the following week.
Stone me.
Memories of that first youth hostel trek with Jimmy. Accommodation cost 1 shilling and sixpence, dinner was half a crown, and breakfast 2 shillings. The bare boards and Spartan furnishings had not prepared me for the sumptuous evening meal of soup, steak pie with 2 veg, and apple pie and custard. I had barely recovered from this by breakfast when porridge was served by the gallon, and when the last pint of tea was gone, the walkers were ready to face the road.
Kel, look, it's where the coast-to-coast walk and the Pennine Way cross each other.
The first thing I noticed was the Dales smell, and this morning, after all the rain, it was multiplied. A great wave drifting over the miles of grass, carrying the fragrance of the moorland turf, wildflowers, and every growing thing. It lapped around us as we walked out of the village. This route over Kisden must once have provided the onlooker with a bizarre spectacle. This is part of the Corpse Way. Funeral processions would carry their dead the 12 miles to the nearest consecrated ground at Grinton. Following the River Swale's lazy, winding way into Reeth, Herriot's Yorkshire once again mingles with my own.
In the very, very first week of the first series of All Creatures Great and Small, Robert Hardy and I were in a gunnel in one of those lanes leading off from Reeth. And we were going through our lines and we were waiting for the rain to stop so we could shoot. And in order not to get wet, I was wearing one of those plastic fold-out ladies' see-through rain hats, you know, you tie under your chin. We were standing there going through lines, and suddenly I felt a hand on my shoulder, and a voice said, "Are you Christopher Timothy?" And I, rather shortly, because I was just trying to get through my lines, I said, "Yes." And a voice said, "I am your alter ego." Da-da-da. And I turned round, and that was the first meeting with the real James Herriot. So the first time that Herriot met the guy who was going to play him on television, he was standing there wearing a plastic see-through ladies' rain hat.
Did you film here?
Oh, yeah. And this is where we were based, right at the very beginning. And where we end up tonight is over there, look. See? Just over there, the next youth hostel.
Yeah, still a long way, though.
Grinton Church, the final resting place on the old Corpse Way.
Oh, for a hot shower.
I just want to get these boots off.
It's been a great day, though, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yes, but I still want a shower.
And I still want to get these boots off.
I'm sure I recognise this place, you know.
Yeah, we used it in All Creatures as a prison of war camp. When Jimmy and I arrived, I removed my boots and pulled on a pair of plimsolls before entering. This, it seemed, was the rule. I had feared that I might be regarded as a rather old-fashioned youth, but there were people of all ages, and we were all there by our own physical effort. There's something you've got to see before it gets dark.
I'm grabbing that shower while the water's still hot.
Is it far?
No.
See you at supper then.
Herriot writes frequently of the green tracks that wander over the dales, which often come to an end at lead mines. These beautiful valleys were once the home of a bustling, prosperous mining industry. But by 1865, it was all over. I find something poignant in the fact that here in this grassy country of cattle and sheep, a great industry was born, flourished, and died, leaving only the silent relics.
What was the name of that Pekingese?
Tricky Woo.
Yeah, that's right. He was always suffering from flop pot and cracker dog. Just before we started filming, right at the very beginning in 1977, I spent a week with Jack Watkinson, the vet in Leyburn, who was going to be our veterinary advisor. Well, I was allowed to sit in at the surgery and see Jack with the client and their pets, and I saw some actual operations. And I went out on every single one of his calls, morning, noon and night. And each day out with Jack, it was just like a chapter out of one of the books. And there was one day when we were out in the middle of nowhere, and as we passed a tractor by the side of the road, a farmer flagged us down. He said, "Look, I've got no time to get to surgery, so please, can you take the stitches out of our dog here?"
Poor dog.
So Jack got some stuff out of the back of the car. He laid the dog on the bonnet, and there and then, he removed some stitches that he'd sewn in some time before. Yeah, well, then the farmer offered us some ale out of a jug. I tell you, as we sat by the side of the road sipping that ale, well, it could have been a story straight out of a Herriot book.
Where are you off to tomorrow, please?
Oh, I'm going to make my way to the coast. I'm going the Herriot route.
So we'll see you in Robin Hood's Bay?
Yeah, all right.
Whereabouts?
I don't know. How well do you know Robin Hood's Bay?
I do.
Let's have a drink. We'll talk about it. Richmond, the market town of Swaledale. And outside that church, TV's James first spoke to Helen Alderson. Now I've got an appointment with Jack Watkinson, the veterinary advisor on all creatures great and small. We're meeting at the Richmondshire Museum,
where they have an exact replica of the Scaledale surgery. Now then, Jack.
Hi, Chris. Back where we started 14 years ago. That was when you were a novice veterinary surgeon, Chris.
Oh, those are the days, yeah.
Back into our old surgery.
So, what's that?
Oh, you're going to quiz me about these things. Antiquated, pre-James Herriot, really, this. It's a balling gun, used for administration of medicines to horses when we gave a bolus. A bolus was a ball. The ingredients of the medicine was formed into a ball, popped into there, in the medicine in there, and then, you know, down the hatch, ba-doink, bang. Oh, yes, Chris, there you go. That's a tracheotomy tube used in horse practice, and museum piece or not, James Herriot piece or not, that is a current piece of apparatus. It's used in horses, like its name, tracheotomy, for putting in the trachea. Comes to pieces, would you believe? That's the hole. In upper respiratory obstruction in horses, often post-operative for an operation we do high up in the neck, in roarers and whistlers, but never mind about that. And it causes swelling high up, occludes the breathing, and this instrument is placed through the tracheotomy incision. We cut the skin, we make a circular incision into the cartilage of the windpipe of the trachea. That goes in, and it allows the horse to breathe freely until the upper respiratory obstruction is recovered. Horses even race with them in. They're cleaned out every day. The grooms clean them out. They're detachable. I don't know if I can show you. There you are. They're detachable. Put them in and back again. And
What's this?
Reminds me going out through the night. It's an obstetric. It's used for the delivery of. It's an obstetrical instrument used for the delivery of foals and calves mainly, in fact, only. And it's a crutch. It's called a crutch. It's the third arm. It becomes the vet's third arm in a difficult delivery, perhaps the head back or the legs back.
Okay.
And you're the calf, Chris. You're a calf being delivered. And this is me going into the vagina, and that you're the calf's shoulder, and I can repel it. So I've got two, because the cow puts immense pressure forward with straining, and I want to get that leg up. So I just push back. Sorry, Chris.
You're very strong, sir.
I just push it back, perhaps correct the head, and so forth. It's my third arm. A very useful instrument, old, antiquated, but a very. It's an aid to difficult carvings.
And this is the real surgery in Thirsk. And in those top rooms, James and Helen began their married life. And this is the real James Herriot.
Through May and early June, my world became softer and warmer. The cold wind dropped, and the air, fresh as the sea, carried a faint breath of the thousands of wild flowers which speckled the pastures. At times it seemed unfair that I should be paid for my work, for driving out in the early morning with the fields glittering under the first pale sunshine and the wisps of mist hanging on the high tops. At Scaledale House, the wisteria exploded into a riot of mauve blooms which thrust themselves through the open window. And each morning, as I shaved, I breathed in the heady fragrance from the long clusters drooping by the side of the mirror. Life was idyllic. can't remember much about the wedding. It was a quiet do, and my main recollection is of desiring to get it all over with as soon as possible. I have only one vivid memory of Siegfried just behind me in the church, booming Amen at regular intervals throughout the ceremony. It was an incredible relief when Helen and I were ready to drive away, and when we were passing Skeldale House, Helen grasped my hand. "Look," she cried excitedly, "look over there." Underneath Siegfried's brass plate, which always hung slightly askew on the iron railings, was a brand new one. It was of the modern Bakelite type with a black background and bold white letters which read, J. Herriot MRCVS, veterinary surgeon, and it was screwed very straight and level on the metal.
The village of West Scrafton, in Coverdale. The Herriots spent many holidays here at Grange Cottage, overlooking the smallest village green I've ever seen. To me, Coverdale is wonderful because of its austere beauty. The wild country at the head of the dale. The empty miles of browns, greens and yellows. And the bog pools, like dark mirrors beneath their fringes of reeds. Approaching Middleham, with its famous racing stables, and the one-time home of King Richard III, Middleham Castle.
Those of you who know my books will have little difficulty identifying the fictitious Broughton with the beautiful Victorian town of Harrogate, our refuge for nearly 40 years. James and Helen used to meet up with their friends, Gordon and Jean Ray. Gordon was the vet at Boroughbridge, and he too was escaping from the mud, Wellington boots, cow's posteriors, and the telephone. And they used to share the triumphs and disasters of the past week. They would always have lunch at Betty's, then they would go to the pictures and see a film, and end up with a late evening meal at Louis' restaurant. And all the while they knew that tomorrow was the start of a whole week of hard slog. Herriot claims that no one ever took better advantage of half a day off. The affluent Victorians were addicted to their kippers, kidneys, steak, bacon and egg breakfast, vast lunches and dinners, and frequent snacks in between. They washed all this down with an abundance of wine, spirits and beer. So they needed a place to recuperate, like a modern health farm. They came to Harrogate to take the waters. Sulphur water. Just imagine the worst stink you have ever experienced. Treble it, and you will have some idea how awful it smells.
Water was used primarily for the treatment of rheumatism and arthritis. That included everything that went with it, like footpaths, massage, baths, various kinds. On the market.
You see, as the treatment as it existed between the two world wars, when this town thrived and lived on these small waters, it was time-consuming and expensive. They would stay 3 or 4 weeks and indulge in these waters, drinking them each morning, taking their walks on the Stray, and then going down to the Royal Baths and being immersed in the waters and involved in the various treatments. Well, I suppose it's true to say it was overtaken by modern medicine soon.
Yes. The National Health withdrew the support in '61 and that finished the baths. The doctors tried it for a year afterwards, but couldn't make it pay, so that didn't.
The good thing about the Harrogate waters is that there are no side effects. Whatever good it may do, it will never do anyone any harm. You're doing a good job.
Thank you.
And it's with all due respect, I think I'll nip off and find another sort of drink.
I'm so sorry.
It's all right. Bye-bye.
You're very good help. Here's to Harrogate.
Just to see if you mean target and everything else, it's heavy. I'll have to use it.
Red wine, please. Hello?
Hello.
Just to see if you mean target and everything else, it's heavy. I'll have to use it. You know that.
York's history goes back a long way, with memories of the Romans, medievalism, Tudor and Georgian elegance. It was the headquarters of the Lancastrians during the War of the Roses, and in 1460 the Duke of York's head, wearing a mock crown, was displayed on Micklegate Bar. Queen Margaret in Shakespeare's Henry VI ordered, "Off with his head and set it on York gates, so York may overlook the town of York." Warmgate. The only remaining barbican in Britain. The city walls, visible reminders of the military importance of the city in earlier times. Francis Drake said in 1736, "Though other cities and towns in the kingdom run far beyond us in trade and in the hurry of business, yet there is no place out of London so polite and elegant to live as in the city of York." Stonegate, a thoroughfare for nearly 2,000 years. In our courting and early married days, York is where we spent most of my half-day holidays from the practice. Helen bought her wedding outfit here, And I suppose if we hadn't met the Rays so near to Harrogate, York would still be the venue for our weekly pilgrimage. The Shambles, only 1,000 years old, and where you could shake hands between the top windows. As the rose is the flower of flowers, so this is the building of buildings. Sutton Bank, which during 40 years of veterinary rounds I have observed in all of its moods. The sheer face is sometimes called White Mare Crag, because legend has it that on a dark and stormy night, a figure in the guise of the Abbot of Rievaulx lured a knight to his death. In the course of a wild gallop, the abbot led his victim to the edge of the cliff. The unfortunate knight was mounted on a white mare borrowed from the abbot, and as he toppled over the edge to the rocks below, he looked upwards and saw the abbot swooping above him. The feet in the stirrups were cloven. Overlooking the village of Kilburn, this white horse is not as old as it might appear. It was cut out in 1857 by the local schoolmaster and 30 helpers. Robert Thompson was born in this village. Known to Herriot as a doggy client, he was known to the world as a famous woodcarver.
Great-grandfather happened to be working on a screen for a local church one day, and the chap that he was working with just happened to mention that they were both as poor as church mice. And of course, you know, great-grandfather thought how alike he was the church mouse. The mouse works away with its chisel-like teeth, and of course here he was on the edge of the Hambleton Hills working away very quietly and producing something at the end of the day. So ever since that day, great-grandfather decided the thing to do was to put a mouse on everything as a trademark. And even today we still put, or carve should I say, the trademark on every item of furniture that leaves the workshops.
Coxwold, with its beautiful church and unusual octagonal tower. And 100 yards north, Shandy Hall, where the Reverend Lawrence Sterne, famous humorist and wit, author of Tristram Shandy, lived for 7 years while vicar of Coxwold.
Well, we came ourselves, of course, as visitors in 1963 on a pilgrimage because my husband was a great Sterne fan. and we saw the house in a very sad state. And we managed to persuade the owners and a group of other people to form a charitable trust to rescue it and keep it open to the public. Well, when he was here, Stern talked about hoeing and burrowing away my weeds. And I must say, I've done a bit of that too. Oh, well, the dogs, of course, have been both James Herriot's and now, of course, Jimmy's patients ever since we first came here.
When asked whether his humour was befitting a man of the cloth, Stern replied, "Sorrow is better than laughter. For a cracked-brained order of Carthusian monks, I grant you, but not for men of the world." From Shandy Hall, you can just make out the noble ruins of Violent Abbey. I'll never forget the first time Helen took me to Revo Abbey. I don't know what I'd expected, but I was struck speechless. I have driven over this road thousands of times, the highway to the coast. The sudden transition from lushness to austerity is startling, and it happens in minutes. The North York moors, a unique area of wide vistas and deep gills that sweeps away eastward to the rugged cliffs of the coast, transporting the traveller into a different world. And on Easby Moor, near where he was born and grew up, the 60-foot monument to Captain James Cook, one of the greatest mariners that ever lived. Staithes. The entire place breathing the very essence of the sea. An almost uncanny awareness of smugglers' past, all bound in by its two headlands. Captain Cook's tiny cottage, where he lived for about 18 months until 1745. When Cook was 17, he was sent here by his father to be an apprentice to William Sanderson, the grocer. An old fisherman told James Herriot that the cod and lobster had been washed away 3 times in his history, and he claimed that he'd witnessed the last one. Hundreds of bottles of beer being washed out to sea. It was a terrible sight. And it was here Cook fell in love with ships and the sea. And here in Whitby he learned his skills in seamanship. Beneath the statue it reads, "To strive, to seek, to find and not to yield." In 1768, Cook sailed for Tahiti in the locally built Endeavour.
And Whitby is where Dracula took refuge in the unhallowed grave of a suicide. Count Dracula, vampire, one of the undead. The picturesque Robin Hood's Bay, whose name, apparently, has absolutely nothing to do with the outlaw of Sherwood Forest. Now, where did we say we'd meet?
It's all your fault.
My fault?
Yeah, I'm going this way, you go there.
Ruth! Chris, where have you been?
Ruth.
I have been uphill and down dale. What do you mean?
Hi.
David, how are you?
Good.
Where should we go?
Cup of tea.
Scarborough and the Grand Hotel, which has the most memories because of 6 months spent here with the RAF during the war, when we slept in the uncarpeted rooms with the windows nailed open, marched around the echoing corridors under the shouts of the special police, and clattered up and down the stone service stairs. After the war, I got a tremendous kick taking Helen there for tea. It was very pleasant to sit in the now richly carpeted lounge, drink tea, and listen to a string orchestra play selections from Rose Marie, with the happy certainty that nobody could order me to do anything. Well, you know Scarborough better than we do, don't you?
Yeah, well, if you just go at the top of the hill, you see Ambronte's grave on the right-hand side, and then if you keep going just by the castle, you can stand and you can see both the North Bay and the South Bay. In fact, it's the only place in Scarborough you can see both bays at the same time.
Lovely.
Take the right money.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, love. Bye.
Bye.
Turn left.
Yeah, right. A picture of my Yorkshire, from the Pennines to the sea. Yet I feel I have only flicked at the canvas. In literally thousands of letters from far corners of Britain, from America, Canada, Australia, and other distant parts of the world, the same phrase recurs. I wish I could see the places you write about. If this reaches them, it will give them at least a glimpse of the countryside where I have found so many of the good things of life.